Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of our empathy series. This will actually be the final episode, and we're going to be talking about empathy in quoting. And yes, you need to have a tremendous amount of empathy when you are quoting and presenting options. So stick around. We're going to talk about how to elevate your sales by quoting in an empathetic way. If you are just now finding this channel, thank you so much for being here. My name is Dana Neeson, and I run a telesales team for Tailored Legacy. We sell final expense insurance over the phone with one carrier. My job is to help you have stronger, more sophisticated sales conversations. If you're just starting with this episode, please go back. Episode 1 covered empathy in the first 30 seconds. Episode 2 covered empathy and discovery. And episode 3 covered empathy and education. As our final episode here is empathy and quoting. Ironically, I happened to have a coaching call earlier with an agent where we fast forwarded to the end of her call because she got the objection of it's too expensive and the woman hung up with her. Well, I wanted to hear how she was presenting options, how she was quoting, because the agent told me she was 80 with COPD. So right off the bat, I already know you have to come in with extreme empathy because you're going to be quoting someone a high payment for a relatively low amount of coverage just because of their age and especially with their health. It's not easy. And of course, it's unfortunately the applicant's fault for waiting so long to put something in place and getting to the point where it's unaffordable, which is probably why she hasn't done anything. However, we can still be incredibly strategic and empathetic when presenting options to make them feel good about the fact that it's okay, that all we're trying to do is help put somebody in a better position, is to help make them feel comfortable changing their situation. And at some point, you are going to have to start getting away from just the cookie cutter offering 3 options model and knowing so much about who you're on the phone with, again, where they've been, where they're at, where they want to be, what they want to take care of, that they're living on a fixed income, that everything is so expensive, that they, why they don't want to be a burden, what would happen to their family if they didn't put anything in place, what does it look like for their family if they do put something in place. So you have covered all of this, but you're also dealing with someone that waited 80 years to put something in place, that now has a lung condition on top of it that might make things just unaffordable. But she still doesn't want to be a burden on her kids. So I asked this agent, hey, can I use this call on what not to do? And we had a good laugh and she said, yes, go for it. So I'm going to play what coming in without empathy sounds like. And then we're going to talk about how you could have done it different.
Okay. And this plan will also include additional coverage for your family if you pass away from an accident, because like we said earlier, we don't know when our time will come. We also don't know how it will happen. And remember, accidental death benefit, this would provide an immediate payout. So God forbid, if you start your policy today, you were to pass away from an accident tomorrow, your daughter would receive the full accidental. There's no waiting period for the accidental. So if you were to pass away from an accident, we would pay your daughter an additional $25,000. If you were to pass away from a car accident, we would pay your daughter an additional $50,000. If you were to pass away from a common carrier like a bus, plane, train, boat, taxi, and Uber, we would pay your family an additional $100,000. The most common benefit that we pay out on is if you pass away more than 200 miles away from your home, we'll give your daughter the money she needs to bring your body back. So that would not be coming out of your policy. That would be an additional benefit. Do you like the idea of those?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, Patricia. So let's go ahead and take a look. I know that we are living on a fixed income. Everything today is just a little crazy. So I'm going to give you a few options. I'm going to give you an option for just cremation. So if your daughter was able to pay for your wake out of pocket and just to get the funeral home, your cremation covered, all you would need is a $2,500 policy for that. And for you right now, that's looking at $49.43. If you wanted to do a $5,000 policy, which would cover majority of your whole funeral, that would be $95.85. If you wanted to do $7,000, that would cover all of your wake and all of your cremation. That's looking at $132.99 per month.
Well, everything that you have mentioned is far, far, far above my means. So I cannot do that. So appreciate all your time, what you've done for.
Of course.
And she got hung up on. So let's break this down and talk about maybe there's a better approach of how we can be more sympathetic and, of course, keyword this week, empathetic to our customers when we're about to give them quotes for something that is, expensive for not a lot of coverage. And I actually have a paragraph in my script called Managing Expectations, and I will read that part for you so that you can see what we say. Now, before I give you some quotes, I do want to talk to you about something first. Now, we already know that age does play a factor in price, but we also have the COPD as well. And so being 80 with COPD, of course, isn't the most ideal situation here. So because of this, it may be more expensive than you thought, or maybe you've realized that, and that's why you've been shopping around and getting quotes. And as you've seen, this will be the reality anywhere you go. So kind of what I want to know is, are you possibly open to easing the burden for your family by maybe reducing the amount of coverage so it can remain affordable? Or is it all or nothing? Now, this would have been appropriate if she said, I want $5,000 to take care of everything. And I may be saying that because I may only be offering her the $2,500 to start or $3,000 to start. They have to agree with easing the burden so that you can justify giving them a smaller amount of coverage than they asked for. It continues by saying, okay, perfect. Because when I do recommend some coverage amounts for you, it's because I want to make sure that you can put something in place for your family that feels affordable. And that if you are open to easing the burden and your family gets maybe a check for $3,000 instead of the $5,000 that you originally wanted, that's a heck of a head start compared to what they would have had to come up with out of pocket if you didn't get anything. Also remember, you don't need as big of a policy with us as you would with someone else because the Guardian Society will be there for your family to make sure they aren't overcharged. Does that make sense? Yes. So I'm doing a little reminder that not only do we have to go down because I need to be sensitive to affordability, but also we have such a great advantage with the FCGS where we could get the cost down for the family so they don't need as much coverage with us. So it's a two-prong approach. Now, earlier I had said we got to get away from offering 3 quotes. Disclaimer, 3 quotes is in my script because that is a beginner's way to quote. But when you have to get to the point where you're just offering 1 quote and you're asking them how that feels. So in this situation, I would have said, I think it's appropriate to start at $2,500, which I think the agent did start at the right place. It was something like $54. Now the mistake she made was not checking in. She's like, well, if you want to go to $5,000, it would be this. And if you want to go to $7,000, it would be that. And just a good rule of thumb in general, once you start getting closer to $100 a month, you're going to start making people feel really uncomfortable. That is sort of the mark where it starts to feel suffocating. So the further away you can stay from that $100 mark and checking in, the better off you're going to be if you're coming in with an empathetic approach. So I would have said, okay, the first option I have here, which is going to take care of at least the cremation expenses, it may not leave much behind, but at least your daughter won't have to come out of pocket. That option is coming in at about $54 a month. Now, because she's 80, I actually didn't even talk about this part with the agent, but hopefully you're watching. The cost per unit for the AD&D goes up with age. And so it may have only been appropriate to offer her maybe 1 unit of accidental here instead of 5, because that would have lowered the cost. Just coming in by memory right now, I think the 5 units of accidental death for someone who's 80, it's either $7.50 or $10 a month, not the standard $5. And so that's a 20% of the total quote. You could have brought that down to 1 unit, made that $1.50 or $2, and it's still additional coverage in the event of an accident. So that's just some critical thinking that I would have done there. And then the price would have probably been closer to maybe $48 a month. I'm just pulling numbers. So let's pretend it was $48 a month. Now, before I give you any other options, how does that feel? Okay, and you sit there and let them feel the weight of the quote you just gave them. I want her to either tell me that sounds good or that's more than I can afford. And if she says it's more than I can afford, not a problem. Why don't we take it down to $2,000 and see what that is? Because we've already led up to this with managing expectations that we might have to be lower than what we wanted. But anything is better than nothing. So let's go down to $2,000. Now $2,000 runs at $35 a month. Does that feel a little bit more comfortable? See how I'm going down and then checking in, not just kind of being robotic and saying, here, if you want to keep going up, and me giving you higher rates without being, empathetic and what that might be doing to you. That caused the client to hang up because it just doesn't seem like you care, right? And once we get to a place that feels comfortable, then we make them feel really good. That's awesome. I'm so glad we found something that you feel that you can afford, but that's also going to help put your family in a better position. So we're going to list your daughter first or your son, right? And then you just start writing out the application. But how we make our clients feel is a direct reflection of your conversion rate. And if they feel like just a number, and if you're just quoting them 3 quotes because you think you're supposed to, and that's the result of the end of your 40 minutes that you spent with that person, it's ultimately going to be for nothing. So I hope that helped give you some aha moments when it comes to being empathetic in quoting. When you know better, you can do better. So do better on your next calls. Remember that the entire conversation is one big hug. And if they feel that you care, they're also going to feel that you will get them the best results. If you found value from this video, please give it a like. If you learned something, post a comment. If you'd like more information on how to join my team, my contact information is in the description below. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful sales day. Bye.